girlfriend of a Boston police officer whose body was found
in the murder trial of Karen Reed after the jury said it was unable to
they
reach
will
a
retry
verdict.
Karen Reed
is
after a judge declared
Welcome back to The Alternate, inside America's biggest trials. And today we're breaking down day 5 of the Karen Reed retrial, and things, well, it got technical, but really important. Today, the only person the jury would hear from is Ian Wiffin. He's a digital forensic examiner from a company called Cellebrite. They specialize in pulling hidden data off phones. He didn't get the actual phone from Jennifer McCabe or John O'Keefe, but he did get downloads from their phone data. So let's start with Jennifer McCabe's phone. Prosecutors asked Wiffin to zoom in on one big thing. Google searches that Jennifer McCabe made the early morning that John O'Keefe's body was found. We probably have all heard this term before, how's long to die in cold? Well, Wiffin walked jurors through the PowerPoint presentation explaining how to determine exact timestamps for Jennifer's Safari searches. It was really drawn out. It was a very long. So I'm just going to wrap up what I think is the most important and what the jury probably heard. So at 2:27:29 on January 29th, 2022, McCabe's phone opens Safari. She was looking at high school sports sites, Hockomock, something like that, sports, basketball, scheduling, stuff moms do. Then at 2:27:30, that tab closes and she flips to PayPal. A second later, that closes. Then she goes to Eastern Bank, opens, closes in seconds, and then a random YouTube video for It's Raining Men by the Weather Girls popped open. Who knows? And then at 2:27:40, more about basketball, scheduling, and this is also the timestamp to take note of. This is one piece of data that, we're going to hear about where House to Die in Cold was searched. But Wiffin testified that based on his investigation, that famous House to Die in Cold search didn't actually happen at 2:27:40 like defense says, but it happened at 6:23 a.m., much closer to when John O'Keefe's body was discovered. They also asked Wiffin about if she deleted this browser history. You'll hear this later on, but Wiffin said it wasn't manually deleted. It was probably a system event that just happens, meaning the phone just cleaned itself. Now flipping to John O'Keefe's phone, Wiffin was asked to review health data, movement, location, tracking, battery temperature, and facial recognition data from midnight until 6 a.m. He said O'Keefe's phone was moving between 12 o'clock and 12:05 along Washington Street. And then at 12:19, John O'Keefe pulls up Waze. And then at 12:24, the phone slows down and stops at 34 Fairview Road, the house where the party was. Between 12:27 and 12:38, the phone stays near the house around the Flagpole area. He pulls up a lot of data about where the phone is pinging, which I'm going to put a slide here for that. And he marks on the slide where the center points are. That could mean John was somewhere between 10 meters every which way of those dots. This guy uses meters, so I'm going to just tell you 10 meters is around 30 feet. If you track your kid, you probably know these pings, as sometimes even if your kid's not moving and you're pulling up their data, it kind of like points to different directions. So I think that's what he's talking about. O'Keefe's phone keeps moving a bit until about 12:32, or actually at 12:32. After that, it is stationary. He says the camera portion of the phone is also blocked and never becomes unblocked at that point. Also then testified to the battery temperature of this phone, which brings up another big piece. At midnight, the phone was about 85 degrees, and then as the night went on, the battery cooled way down. 72 degrees at 12:37, then 50 degrees at 1:36, and then by 6:14, it was just 37 degrees, which is super cold. That temperature data basically backs up that the phone was likely under John O'Keefe, and John O'Keefe was exposed to freezing cold temperatures for hours. The prosecutor asked him at the end if he believed that John ever went anywhere beyond the flagpole, to which Wiffin said he did not think so. He thought John's body never went past that flagpole. Then came cross-examination, and Robert Alessi for the defense tried to poke holes into Wiffin's statements. He was a little shaky at first, and I'm talking about Alessi, the defense attorney. He actually only got to pull a couple pieces of data out before they cut him off, but here's what we found out today. He pointed out that Wiffin's report didn't always say who sent O'Keefe's text messages, including one key one from Brian Higgins around 12:20 a.m. asking if Keefe was going to come over, and another one from Jennifer McCabe just a few minutes later asking if he was coming. Alessi also asked if the cell phone could have been opened by anyone other than John because it said his facial ID was recognized to open. You know how that happens on the iPhones. Wiffin said the only way that was to happen is if John had two facial recognition people or profiles on his phone. I'm going to say he doesn't. I don't know anybody that does that. So I think that only John O'Keefe's face was probably the one that was opening the phone that night. He then questioned Wiffin as to why he didn't include certain movement details, like when the phone traveled westward and went 25 meters after it was locked at 12:32. And that was manually locked, you know, when you like push the button on the side. Now, like I said, it's really odd to me that prosecutors kept with this metric system because this westward movement was 25 meters, which is approximately 85 feet. It does beg a question, like where did he go in that 85 feet? Defense didn't get much further than this, or actually any further than this, before the judge stopped questioning and dismissed the jury for the day. Well, listen. After lunch, everyone but the jury came back, and they brought in a crash reconstruction firm called ARCA, who was being questioned in what's known as a voir dire hearing. This is where the lawyers get to interview potential witnesses over matters that come up in court and which could keep them from testifying. This is actually where things got real juicy, and we saw a different side of Prosecutor Brenner. I'm telling you, this was eye-opening to me. Now, since the jury did not hear this, we can't talk about it because, you know, we're keeping things real on the straight and narrow here, and we don't want any bias coming in, but I will tell you where to get the bias. Our bias is coming in on Patreon. So if you listen to Patreon, if you haven't signed up, go to it, patreon.com/the alternate. This is where we're going to give you our opinions, and we will tell you all about this, what happened today outside of the jury box, because it is very interesting. I will give you a little teaser. The prosecutor thinks defense is in bed with this ARCA team, so they do not want any part of ARCA testifying. So go to patreon.com/the alternate to listen and subscribe. There's also a subscribe button on Apple, and you can get that there if that's where you listen to our podcast. But overall, today was data heavy, but pretty crucial. It's all about this timeline and who knew what, when, and where. So we'll be watching this technical evidence play into tomorrow. So we'll see the defense come back and question Wiffin even further. So stay tuned, for the next few days are going to be really intense. Margot has you tomorrow for day 6. Follow the alternate if you haven't already, and don't forget to rate and review us, and we'll see you again tomorrow.